Hello and welcome to the Unashamed Contender podcast. I am your host, the Unashamed Contender, and this evening I will be debating Julia. I've known Julia for a while. She's a friend of mine, and we're going to be debating whether or not we should willingly or genuinely reconsider our beliefs. I'm taking the position that we should be willing to do this, and she's taking the position that we should not. I'm hoping to get some clarification on that. And so with that, Julia, I'll turn it over to you. You're welcome to introduce yourself and or explain why you think we should not be willing to genuinely reconsider our beliefs.
Hi, I'm Julia. So for me personally, I think saying we should reconsider our beliefs is doubting God in a sense. And when you doubt God, the Bible clearly states not to do that. Um, so if God were to give you more information about himself, yes, we should be open and research it and make sure it is from God. But to consider a different belief altogether, like Buddhism or, something that's far fetched out there, I feel like you have to put down God, put like throw everything you believe about God and set it aside in order to reconsider that Buddhism is could potentially be true in a sense, and that's doubting God.
Okay, so yeah, we talked about this a little bit before. And that's how we decided to have this debate.
Mhm.
So let me clarify something. So I do believe that it is possible for you to genuinely reconsider your beliefs without actually doubting them. And I'll give you an example of how people come in contact with evidence or how they could and sometimes do. I'm going to give you a specific extreme example to make the point, and to make it clear. And then you can see how you can actually see the evidence and still that might be contrary to what you want to believe or what you think is right, and still you can choose to believe the thing that you want. So, for example, if you were to say that, let's say there's a woman and she's married, and her friend comes up to her and she's like, you know, I don't want to be the one to tell you, but your husband's been cheating on you. And the married woman can be like, yeah, I don't want to hear that, right? And they can be like, I'm not interested in looking at that evidence. I'm not interested in that information. I'm just going to choose to believe that that's not true, and I don't want to hear about it. So here's an example where somebody can just like ignore evidence or potential evidence and just believe what they want. But now let's change it just a little bit. Here you have the same woman. Her friend comes up to her and says this, and then when she's like, "Yeah, I don't want to hear it," now her friend ties her to a chair and she makes her listen, and she's like, here's the video footage of this happening, here's this, here's these messages, here's, and she forces her friend to see all this information. The woman that's sitting there being forced to hear the evidence can still choose to deny all the evidence because that's not what she wants to believe. And so therefore she's maintaining the choice to believe what she wants in spite of the evidence. I mean, do you agree that that's something that can and does happen? Maybe not that extreme where your friend's tying you up to a chair or anything, but like you do realize that people do that. Like they choose to believe what they want regardless of evidence.
Sure, I think that parents do that with their children all the time. Like they smell marijuana and they're like, "Oh, my kids don't smoke," and they just refuse to believe that. But I think there is a difference between considering everyday, the little things, and then considering God altogether, a divine being that you're not supposed to have any doubt, no wavering thing, you know, of God.
Sure. Well, and I agree. I mean, they're definitely different, and I wasn't trying to say that they're the same. What all that I was attempting to do there was to draw out that you can, like, it doesn't matter what the evidence is. All the point of my analogy was to say that it doesn't matter what the evidence is. You can choose to believe whatever you want. And that being the case, you don't actually have to doubt a thing in order to seriously consider the evidence. Like you can seriously consider it and like still maintain your choice on faith. And you can do that like even if all the evidence piles up against you, you can still keep doing it the whole way through. So I don't believe that you actually that in order to genuinely reconsider your beliefs or to consider whether or not they might be wrong, I don't think you actually have to stop believing at all. I know why people think that, but if you actually think it through, the belief is a choice and you can maintain whatever choice you want regardless of what happens. Do you mind turning your device back the other way?
And it's, yeah,
Huh?
hold on.
You're fine. I know why you did it, but you'll appear very small if you do. There you go. Now you're big again.
It was messing up on me.
Okay, so that's where I'm. I mean, would you agree with that? Like I get it, and there is a verse just to help you out of here a little bit. I think it's in First John somewhere, but it says, if whosoever believeth not God hath made him a liar. And in other words, if God is truth and he only speaks truth, and you don't believe him, you're calling him a liar. And the thing is that if you're calling him a liar and he never lies, that makes you a liar. So believing God is necessary. But my point is you can believe God in spite of all the evidence and still, give a fair and honest look at the evidence. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do think potentially reconsider is the wrong word, just because the definition of reconsider is to change or is to possibly change your mind on it, to think about a decision or option to with the intention of possibly changing it.
Well, but wouldn't
So
that wouldn't that be what an honest investigation does? Like let's say it's like, okay, I'm going to honestly look at the evidence here. If you're not willing to, oh, I might be wrong on this. If that's not a possibility for you, how are you honestly investigating it at all? It sounds like you're just kind of looking at the information just to like say that you did. It's not like you're really intending to be changed in any way by this information because you've created like a shield like I'm impenetrable, I know everything, I'm right, whatever it is. I'm not saying that these are your thoughts, but you kind of created a shield that if the evidence maybe even proved you were wrong, you would still like maintain, which I did demonstrate that a person can do. So, but do you see the issue with that?
I think it's more or less the so to maybe absorb new information is a good word for it, but not reconsider, because again, in case you would have to doubt God is fake. How could you consider Buddhism as real if you don't have that as you're looking at the information and they're like, okay, you gotta consider God is not real.
Well,
I mean, that's
the way is just what I demonstrated before. You could be like, I'm choosing to believe the testimony of the Bible is true. At the same time, I'm going to honestly look at this, and if the evidence leans against me, you still have the choice to to maintain the belief that the Bible's true, even against the evidence. You could do that. So that's how I would be posing that you could do it. And like I've done it before, so
okay.
I know it can be done. But I understand that if you've not done it before, it can feel very like you feel very vulnerable, like you're susceptible to attack, or so to speak. Does that make sense?
I think it's good to absorb new information and then maybe weigh the options that way. But I don't know, to doubt or drop God altogether is a very
But you don't have to do that in
for
order to
me
look at.
it's very, yeah.
You see, okay, I'm not
I
like
think
I.
it's just a for me, yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, if we can go on,
But
I know what you're saying, and I do understand the concern, but when you let's put it this way, let's take this into a little bit different of a spectrum. So far we've talked about how just questioning the Bible altogether and the existence of God or whatever. What if even within the Bible, like you believe in God, but maybe you're wrong about a bunch of stuff in doctrines or whatever, like the gospel or the second coming or whatever doctrines you might believe. Like wouldn't it be the same idea or same concept? Yeah, that, oh, but you're doubting, you know, what you believe, and that's sin. Well, but if you were wrong about a doctrine, how could you ever be corrected?
So I don't think it's the same thing.
Well, it's
Just
different. I know
because
that.
God can reveal the secrets to you if you open your heart and make sure, you test whatever, let's say you hear a voice in your head and you test to see if it's God or not, um, as the Bible says, but you make sure you listen to it. Because I mean, I have some doctrines that I grew up with, and I've had to reread some things and discover new things on my own, and like, oh, they're wrong on that, or
Oh, so
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 there
you're
is.
familiar with this. That's good.
So I do believe looking into something more deeply is, highly recommended. But with the factor that God, considering God is not real is just for me is not an option. But reconsidering your beliefs or doctrines to research it more thoroughly, I think it's highly recommended.
Would you recommend? Okay, well, and that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Would you recommend that a Buddhist or Islamic or anybody from any other religion take your own advice in not questioning Allah or not questioning, whatever deity, Thor, whatever they believe in? Would you recommend that they follow the same advice that you would give to yourself?
No, but I also don't think that they have evidence that their, deity is real.
Well, yeah, but they don't feel that way about it. So that's the thing here. If you want somebody else to be vulnerable and honestly consider, but you're not willing to do it yourself, it kind of makes you hypocritical. No?
Not when the Bible says don't doubt God and don't know that He is God.
But what if the Quran says that?
The Quran says what?
What
Don't
if
doubt it.
yeah, what if the Quran says Allah is the only true God and if you doubt his existence then you can't be saved or whatever thing. Like then what?
Okay, so there is a verse. Hold on, I'm gonna make sure it's quoting. It's either in Proverbs or John. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and
Yep,
do not lean on your own understandings, and acknowledge Him, and He will make you straight in your own path."
sure.
So, in that way, God will give you the wisdom to know what is right and wrong. For me, God has already given me that wisdom, so there is no, or not, I'm not be, the wisdom that He is God, that there is
Sure.
no other
Okay,
God.
sure. Yeah. Okay. Well,
So
but what
why so why would I ever doubt him if he's already given
well,
that understanding?
so I'm not posing that you should doubt the that the scriptures are true and that the God of Genesis is true. I've never posed that. All I've ever posed is that you maintain that belief, but honestly and seriously look at the evidence because that's that's just the honest thing to do. Like Christians, one of the commandments is about honesty. You're not supposed to bear false witness, and the Bible says all these bad things about liars. In Revelation 21 verse 8, it says that all liars, will be cast in the lake of fire. I would assume that means that Christian liars and white liars and every other, I'm not trying to base it all off on the word all, but my point is the Bible's very clear that liars, you know, aren't doing so well with God, and that's all based around the principle of dishonesty or honesty and dishonesty. Well, the thing is if you won't honestly look at evidence, you're not even being honest with yourself. How can you be a Christian if you're not willing to be honest with yourself?
If we're talking about other religions, I think we already agreed.
Well, we'll go ahead
You
and talk. Let's talk about it in context of the other religions thing, just for now. Like,
Okay, I was gonna say I think we already agreed that like looking at other facts with small things in life, you should always do that and test
sure,
it and
yes.
make sure it's true. But with other things, maybe not so much. But with other religion, yeah. Ask the question again. What was the question?
Well, how can you? Christians are supposed. I'll make it simple. Christians are supposed to be honest. How can you be a Christian if you're not willing to honestly consider evidence to the contrary?
Okay, so with other religions, I think you should reconsider, or not reconsider, but look at the other religions with detail. Um, like with Amish or with Buddhism, I think it's really good to understand where they come from. But to believe in their
Not
God
not believe,
is.
not believe. You can still maintain belief in whatever you want, regardless of any evidence that ever comes your way. You can
So in that case, it's just research of the other religion.
yeah, but it's research that's trying to think how to express intellectual honesty without using those words. It's just you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Does that make sense? Like, let's take it in the context of okay, somebody else has a different. They believe the Bible like you, but they have a different view of it. Like in the same sense that you would honestly like, okay, I have to be vulnerable. I don't like if I'm wrong about this. I don't want to put myself in a position where I could never be corrected. That would be terrible. In that same way, intellectual honesty would do the same regarding, so to speak, all religions. Like, I'm not saying go out and consider them. I'm just making the point that if Christians are going to be honest people, which Christians are supposed to be honest, then they have to be honest enough to realize it's possible they're wrong. They don't have to believe it, but they have to acknowledge that it is possible that they're wrong, and they should allow themselves to be vulnerable to um, alternative information. And here's what I find: even though I don't believe in, these other religions, you can still find that in them there are traces of truth that Christians don't even practice perhaps like they should. So, you take the good and you leave the bad, but you won't even realize there's good there if you're just like, nope, can't, nope. And you just won't look, won't listen, won't anything. It just, I don't see how that's honest. I kind of feel like that is, I want to see this, I only want to believe this, and I don't care about evidence, I don't care about anything. And if you do that, it's kind of like you don't necessarily even care about truth. And Christians are supposed to value truth. But if you're like, nope, only the thing that I want, only the thing that I believe, only the thing that I was taught, it's not really about truth anymore. Now it's just about maintaining what you already believe. And so really you just care more about your beliefs than you do about the truth, or than you do about honesty. And I think that the whole Christian religion is founded on truth and honesty. So it would be really weird if a Christian wasn't willing to be vulnerable in these ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you if I look at the definition vulnerable, it's gonna change my screen. Do you mind looking it up?
Sure. Yeah, I'll look it up here for
Or
you.
I can look it up, it'll just change. So while you're looking it up, now I think researching doctrines or certain beliefs, you should do it. You should to make sure that you know the state of the dead and do all the research on that, or know what the Holy Spirit is, or know all these things. I think that's very important. But there's a difference between researching beliefs and doctrine and then, you know, reconsidering being vulnerable in your faith in God.
Yeah, I agree that they're different. I just think that, well, and we'll get into it a little bit. Let me read your definition here. I get your point, but here's your definition. And this is the AI overview. If you want me to select an actual, in fact, let me just select Merriam-Webster. Vulnerable. Number one is capable of being easily hurt or harmed physically, mentally, or emotionally, open to attack, harm, or damage, liable to increased penalties. Okay, so these are all about. This
Yeah,
is
those are
not.
bad definitions.
Well,
I
they're
don't think
good
we're using it in that
definitions,
sense.
but they're not in context of what we're talking. I'm talking about like intellectual vulnerability, not physical danger. That's the. But it's the same type of idea. You allow yourself in a position where evidence could, take a stab at you. it's the same concept, even though it's not, yeah, physically or mentally hurt. Here's one. This is from Cambridge Dictionary. Able to be easily physically or mentally hurt, influenced, or attacked. So mentally influenced is one. I don't know about easily. I don't think you should be easily anything, but the idea being you're allowing yourself to be in a position where you could be, where the evidence could take a stab at you and, like, mess you up a little bit.
So this is another question too. Exactly
So,
how do you find research to let's say if I wanted to believe in Buddhism, how would I go about finding the research on if they're legit or not? Like, would you use the internet? Would you go to their, temples and read
well,
their whatever?
so that's a interesting question. How would you do it with the Bible or Christianity, I should say?
I mean, with you read the Bible and then you
Yeah,
also pray about it.
yeah. So that's probably what I would recommend. Like, if they have a holy book that's considered the Word of God, like I think the Quran is basically the equivalent to the Bible just for their religion, then I would look at that, and I would only look at that. I wouldn't, like, let any guru tell you what it means, because if they're wrong, then that's no good. So I would want to know what they I want to know what the book really said. I would want to make sure that I really know what it's about, not just what somebody who's part of that religion says that it's about. It's kind of
Okay.
like, does that make sense?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
with the book or with Google, people can easily make up words just to make it convincing enough where it could be believable. So, in which case, you could believe it, but it's wrong. For instance,
Well, that can happen with the Bible too.
I Googled a type of medicine and I
Mhm.
know it works. It stopped my animal from having seizures and cured many other things. And Google said it was useless. So
Right.
there is a point where you can't trust certain things.
Oh yeah, no, fully. I agree. I'm not saying, like, one. I wanted to be clear. Like, I'm a Christian. I'm not saying go out there and look at all these religions. I'm just saying that if a Christian's not willing to be intellectually honest and vulnerable and value truth over their own beliefs, then I don't see how he can be a Christian. I do agree that searching through information, even for the Bible and Christianity, like, there's so much nonsense, like Christians saying, oh, it's this or that, and then there's verses in the Bible that don't technically exist in the original Hebrew or Greek manuscripts, and you're like, well, why are these here? Why does it appear in some really old manuscripts but not in others? And it's messy, and that can make it annoying and difficult. But it's there, it's part of it. So what do you do about it? Well, you deal with it, or you can choose not to, but I choose to, and I find it fun. Um, so anyways, you go ahead for a sec. I'm gonna try to figure out where I was at, but does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's good to reconsider, certain things, especially if you haven't done the research. But let's say the state of the dead, for instance, just hop off religion, well, the whole God thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Within the circle of Christianity is what you're saying.
if you do thorough research on it and you know the truth of it, then why would you open your mind to other ideas over and over and over again if you already know?
Within Christianity, because you could
Yeah.
be wrong. Yeah, the reason is because you could be wrong. When
But if you've
people
already done the research extensively, then why continue? Like, if you know God is God, why continue to open or reconsider the idea of it?
because, well, first we started within Christianity, then you seem to be taking it out that God is God when you said
Sorry, I
that.
did throw God in there.
Yeah,
Yep,
so
state of the dead,
let's
state of the
stay
dead.
within
Stay
Christianity
up.
for, we'll just stay within that the Bible's true. Do we understand it correctly? Let's stay there for a sec. So the reason you would always allow yourself to be vulnerable is because what if you were wrong? Like, I've well, I don't want to say I've always been a studious person, but ever since I accepted Jesus to the best of my knowledge at 16, I've always been studious. Like they wanted to baptize me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna study first. I'm gonna make sure that I actually agree with this stuff. I'm gonna look up at the verses, and like I'm gonna look this up. Now, I was baby, I didn't really know what I was doing, but and to the best of my knowledge, I looked it all up, and I'm like, okay, I see it. I see where you're getting it from. It does appear to be here in the scriptures, and so I mean, I guess that's a thing. So yeah, okay, fine. And they were happy about that because they were afraid that I was going to change my mind. And I'm like, I'm not going to change my mind. I'm just not going to jump into something. I want to make sure I know what I'm doing. But then years later, I go back and look at it. Now I had done the research, right? But I go back and look at it, and I'm like, man, how did I even come to that conclusion? There's like almost no evidence for that whatsoever. And this happens. This has happened with me over a thing or two. Um, but the reason to maintain the vulnerability is because you could be wrong, and if you were wrong, like you may have been sincere, and and you came to this conclusion it was wrong, but God's like, hey, I'm still working with him, it's fine. I'll take care of it. And then the Lord comes along to show you the truth, and you're like, nope, I've already researched this twice, I know it's the truth, and I'm not changing. Now it's like, how is God supposed to work with that? Like, how would you? The thing is God's going to reach you through your mind, and if you have set up in your mind blocks that, nope, if it's not this, it's error, and I'm not listening. How is God supposed to get through the block that you've set up? Like, I mean, I know he could work a miracle and meet you on the road to Damascus, but I don't think it's intelligent for us to just assume that God's going to do that all the time. Um, so how is he supposed to reach you if you've shut off all the avenues for him to be able to do that?
So I do think that you should be open to everything except your faith in God as a person.
So
As a
within you're saying you should be open to all of it within Christianity is what you're saying.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, that's good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I agree with that. And well, and let me ask you this. Because I understand people's hesitancy about looking at evidence. Because if evidence goes contrary to what they think, they don't know how to handle it. They just don't. Because they have no experience doing it. It's like drywall mud. Like you hand somebody a drywall knife and a bucket of mud, and you say mud this wall. They don't know squat. Like they have no technique, they have no knowledge, they've never seen somebody do it. Like they're just lost. Okay? And it's gonna be messy for them. But the thing is, unless they go through that experience of like actually having to do it and being taught and corrected and having to fix their mistake, unless they actually go through, they're never going to get better. So I understand that people not having come in contact with this evidence that's contrary to them before is very disturbing because they just don't know what to do. But I think it's a necessary thing. Um, and and this is the thing that I wanted to ask though. Uh, if you're looking at evidence, first let's just say so you believe and I believe that we have the truth. You believe you have the truth. I believe I have the truth, and I've got it all right. Hopefully, we're humble there, so that way if we're making any mistakes, God can correct us. Okay, so we're both in that frame of mind here. Wouldn't If it's true that we're right, wouldn't looking at the evidence actually support the fact that we're right? If we are in fact right?
The yeah, looking at what evidence? You mean the evidence of that
Within
there's a God
within
or just
Christianity,
doctrine and
yeah, just pick a specific doctrine like the gospel. Like, okay, so you
okay.
think you're right about the gospel, I think I'm right about the gospel, but we don't.
Yeah.
But looking at the evidence, if it's true that we're right, wouldn't examining all the evidence and being fair about it, wouldn't that actually support us if we are in fact right? Wouldn't that like help?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
I agree.
exactly. And I think that that's true across, even if you take it outside of the Christian circle, to all the religions and ideas and worldviews out there. I think that when you do that and you look at all the evidence, I think the evidence points to the fact that the Bible's true and Christianity's true and Jesus was the Son of God. I think that when you do that, the evidence points that way. But the person who doesn't allow himself to be exposed to that alternate to the evidence, he doesn't know that, and therefore he's actually in more danger of being led to believe a different doctrine within Christianity, or even to accept an entirely different religion, like Islam or something. And the reason being because they've not looked at all the evidence. They have no experience, doing the dry. They have nothing, and so they're vulnerable, more vulnerable than the person who's like, you know what? I'm going to be fair about this. I'm going to be honest, and the God of truth will reveal to me the truth. And like he's been exposed to all that, and even knowing all that evidence, some of which tells in his favor and some of which goes against him, knowing all of that, he's like, but I believe this and this is why. And so it's harder to change that person's mind than somebody who's like, yep, nope, I'm not going to listen to any evidence. I don't know how to deal with it. Like they're not really building on a very solid foundation because they've not looked at what they're even building on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So, no, sorry,
I
I
had a
kind of
comment, but
I kind of got a little carried away. No, no,
sorry.
you go ahead. You go ahead. I want to hear from you now.
Um, Tom, there was a couple questions I had in there, but so I do think that looking at the evidence is good, but again, it's you worded it a little differently. It's looking at the evidence or researching it is good, but you're still having that thought. You still have God in your head, being like, okay, He will lead me to the truth. You
Well,
know.
right. Well, see here. Well, here's the thing. So I guess it depends on how far you're going. Like some people will consider the idea that there is no God. Okay, well, when you look at all the evidence, like any, no matter what the truth is, like trying to think how to simplify this. Okay, the universe is here. Now it's here somehow. It's either always existed, it made itself, or someone made it. Those are your only options. Well, the idea that it made itself is a violation of one of the laws of logic. So, I mean, technically, you could argue that all of them are, and to some degree, but like whatever the truth is, it's insane. Like the idea that something made itself, it would have to exist prior to its existence, and that's absurd. So, the idea that the universe made itself is completely bonkers. The idea that it's always been here and never had a beginning ever is also absolutely insane. And the idea that God made everything, also absolutely ludicrous. Like, all of them are impossibly beyond comprehension, and nobody can justify any of them. So, whatever the truth is, it has to be insane. So, I don't see why believing in God is so much more insane than believing that nature is God. Like, it's all nuts. So, my point in saying that was that it depends on how far back you're going, but the concept and the principle still being we should be vulnerable and we should care more about truth and about honesty and fairness than just maintaining what we believe, because you wouldn't recommend that for people of other religions. So, you know, I think that you should follow your own advice. I think everybody should in that sense.
So
I,
it's kind of like saying, is your daughter your daughter? Like, are you going to reconsider that she's your daughter? She's your actually your actual daughter. Like, if you know she's your daughter, then there's no changing that. Now, like I said, I think with a doctrine, with the small things in life, yes, you should be open and you should do your research. But when you have evidence or you have that true faith, that true concrete, that God is God or your daughter is your daughter, then there's no changing that.
Well, okay, and if you maintain that, that's fine. Like I'm not gonna change my mind. I don't think. But the one of the reasons that I say that with such confidence is because I've looked at alternative stuff vulnerably, and I'm like, yeah, no, it all kind of like it all kind of points to the fact, or to the idea that I'm living the right way, doing the right thing, believing the right stuff. Did you? And I don't want to detract from our debate, but it is kind of relevant. I recently did a video called "The Value of Fiction." It's about 39 minutes and 40 seconds or something like that. Did you by any chance watch it?
I don't think I've seen that one.
I think that's an important video that I did, and I would recommend it to anybody, well, to anybody and everybody all the time and forever. But you might look at it because it's relevant in the sense that it makes the point very clearly, that people often argue whether or not the Bible's true, and I'm like, well, let's just assume it's all false. Let's just assume the whole book is made up. Is the Bible valuable? And people will argue, they'll be like, well, how can the Bible be valuable if it's false? And I'm like, well, there are actually a lot of fictional books that hold loads of value. And in that 40-minute video called "The Value of Fiction," I evidence this really strongly. And so when I look at everything and I consider it all, it's like, look, even if the book is fake, you should still be like Jesus and you should still worship God, even as fictional characters. You should, and I prove it. I prove it very well, or at least strongly evidence it very well in those videos, and so that's why I made them. But or that video. So, but does that make sense? Like, I don't know. I'm looking at it from a plane of just like I've looked at a lot of stuff. I would go to when I was younger, and I'll even still do it now. I've kind of largely seen what's out there, but like anti-Bible websites where it's like atheists just like trying to attack the Bible and showing all its inconsistencies and how God's evil in His own book. And I've looked at all that stuff, and I wasn't impressed by most of it. Some of them were like, "Oh, that's interesting," and I had to think about it for a couple minutes, and then I'm like, "Oh, yeah, they actually just can't read the text." Okay, all right, that's simple enough. And so I've done that before. I think most Christians would view that as very dangerous, like a very dangerous thing to do. And I think those Christians are in greater danger of changing their religion and their beliefs because they've not done the research and been honest and vulnerable. Do you agree?
So again, there's that word vulnerable. I do agree with research. I think research is very important, even if it's not like crazy in depth. It's still, I think it's still important to learn, just because if you come across those people, you can kind of understand where they're coming from, but also maybe point them in the direction of Christ.
Oh,
So
sure.
like I have a cousin who believes in Thor, and it's very interesting, very interesting, but it's there's a lot of flawed in it. And I've tried talking to him, but he's very concrete, and the little evidence that he has compared to what I've shared with him.
Right. You mean little evidence for his position compared to the lot of evidence for your position?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand. All right. Well, I'm trying to think. I feel like we've covered a lot of this. I know that I had some stuff that we were gonna look at, but now that I've heard more where you're coming from, and I see that you're actually more in agreement with me than disagreement, I don't see that there's so much need to go through all of this. But let me ask you this question. By the way, do you have a time limit? Do you need to go within a certain amount of time, or okay?
I mean, I do
Let me.
need to cook food eventually, but I
Yeah,
think
no, I understand. Okay,
I'll be
well,
all right.
if we go on too long, which I don't think we will, but if we were to go on too long, just let me know and it's fine. Um,
Okay.
but are there beliefs within Christianity that you have that you think you should never question?
Um,
Like, you believe the Bible's true, like that's a given, like you're not going to question that. You're not going to question the God of Genesis that created everything, like all that stuff. You're maintaining that, but is there anything within Christianity, any doctrine at all, that you think you should never question?
I mean, that's kind of a big statement because there's a lot out there. Like, there's some
Well,
Christianities that don't believe Jesus is God. I mean, at
mhm.
that point, you're again, that's doubting God, in my opinion. And
Well, not necessarily, and here's why I say that. Because it's not that you're doubting what he said, it's more of trying to make sure you understood him correctly. Does that make sense?
right, and in which
So it's not
case, I
like you're
guess that would
questioning
be,
God's word, you're just wanting to make sure you didn't screw up your understanding of it. Does that make sense?
yeah. In
Okay.
which case, I would do research, but I've, yeah, that would. No, yeah, I feel like I fully did that one, so I don't think I would change on that.
Right. Well,
But
and you don't
everything
have
else,
to. So
I
so
would I would relook at everything if it came up. Like my father-in-law, we fight over the state of the dead a lot, and I don't know. I keep finding things and talking to him about it, and then he keeps coming back, and I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta look at this again.
yeah.
So there's that, but it's he is very vague on some things, and which doesn't make sense. But
Um so so going back to my question, I asked, was there anything within the Bible, any doctrine ever that you would not question whatsoever, like because you just wouldn't do it, or no?
no, I think I would if it were to come up, I would research it
okay.
more thoroughly.
So let's just go with this example of, is Jesus God? Because that's the one you had mentioned, right?
Yeah, that's probably the only one I wouldn't question, just because again, it has to do with God
Oh, so
for
that's the only
me.
one you wouldn't question. Okay, well, but again, it's not really questioning God's word or the Bible. It's more questioning your making sure you understood it correctly. But so, for example,
Right.
and I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, I'm just
I
gonna
mean, I
pry
would
you.
research it, but
Uh-huh.
it's to me, I feel like it's doubting him, in which the Bible repeatedly says don't do. For me, anyway.
Well, no,
That's how
no,
I
it's
feel
not
about
about for
it.
you. It's very. In fact, let me just pull up the verse. At least for no other reason than for the audience, it says, "Believe not God made him a liar." Hold on, I'll find it here in just a sec. It's in First John, I believe. Um, believe liar, not. Yeah, yeah, here it is. First John 5, verse 10. It says, "He that believeth on the Son of God hath the witness in himself. He that believeth not God hath made him a liar, because he believeth not the record that God gave of his Son." So, in other words, if you don't believe God, you're calling him a liar, which in turn would make you a liar. So, not believing God is sin. But again, I'm not posing the idea that we should not believe God, but just to make sure that we understood him correctly. Like, because if we didn't
Yeah.
understand him correctly, I mean, then it's not a matter of whether or not we believe him, it's just a matter of whether or not we screwed up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, I'm just going to pick your brain on this, just as a for example. So you're saying that you believe that Jesus is God, and that's the one thing you think you might not question. And I just mentioned what I did about it, but Jesus says in his prayer to his Father, he says, "This is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent." So in his prayer to his Father, it's in red letters in your Bible. I believe it's John chapter 17, verse 3. Jesus says, he says that his Father is the only true God. Well, if, the word only kind of limits it to his Father. So is Jesus also the only true God? Because Jesus himself said, and Jesus doesn't lie, otherwise he died for his own sins and not ours, but he himself said that his Father is the only true God. So, and I don't want to throw that at you and you're not prepared for that, but do you see why, and I'm sure you do, but you can see how other people, when they read texts of scripture, they're like, man, dude, I don't know if what I was told is correct, because Jesus, who didn't sin and therefore he didn't lie, he says that his Father's the only true God. And all these other Christians are saying that Jesus is the only true God. It's like, well, which one is it? You can't have them both, can you?
I think if they continue reading the verses, they would understand more because
Oh, sure.
there's many verses that says, you can't come to me. Jesus says, you can't come to the Father unless by me. And he says that me and the Father are one, in which if so they you know they are one, which makes them one God. I mean, there's lots of
Yeah,
verses
yeah,
you
yeah.
could,
No,
if
no,
they
I
kept reading,
understand.
it would be more clear, and it
Yeah,
more understanding on that.
of course. I don't think we should just go with the one verse. But the thing is it's like we don't want to cherry pick the Bible and be like, well, this verse says something that I like, and then I
Right.
already believe it.
Stop
And
kidding.
this verse says something I don't, so I'm just going to ignore the verses that say something that I don't like. Like, I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think the fair way and the honest way, the way the Christian should do it, is to look at all the verses and try to find out how all of them, like pieces in a jigsaw puzzle, fit together. And then you're like, got the picture. That's beautiful. Like, I think that's how it should be. Um, but and just for the audience sake, I do believe that Jesus is deity. I want to clarify that. I was just picking at my friend here. Um, so how do you feel about that? Do you think that we covered all critical things, or do you think that we left anything out, or do you feel comfortable closing it with that?
Um,
Did you have questions for me? Like you can pry me too.
um, there was a question we kind of talked about it earlier. I don't know. You might have said it. Hmm. No, I think that's probably it.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm satisfied with that. I think we hammered it out pretty well. I think we determined that we don't have to change our beliefs at all, no matter what evidence shows, whether we choose to look at it or not. We can maintain belief in whatever we want just because we choose it. I think we established that it's good for Christians to be honest and consider the evidence and not block out God's means of changing our mind if we're wrong. And I'm glad to find that you agree that we should, you know, seriously look at and consider, you know, within Christianity at the very least, what we believe to make sure that we're right. Um, do you, just because I want to be clear and I want to make sure I understand this because you and I actually do interact outside of debate, but do you, I lost my question. Ah, it was, nah, I lost it. It's okay. Not to worry. So, well, with that, I mean, I'm willing to wrap up if you are. Are you okay with wrapping up, or do you want to?
Yeah,
You
sounds
are
good.
okay. All right. Well, I hope my audience has enjoyed that. I thought it would be a great thing to talk about. I know a lot of Christians are very sketchy about considering alternate beliefs, even within their own um, religion. Considering other beliefs about the Bible. But I do think it's very important for the reasons that we talked. And if you've ever, been afraid of considering evidence outside of Christianity, like maybe the universe did make itself or stuff like that, I'd recommend watching my video called "The Value of Fiction" in my Thoughts and Stuff playlist. I think that makes some very powerful point. Um, but I don't want to take the credit from it because I actually got it from somewhere else. Thank you, Julia, for coming on here and debating me. I hope we can do it again. It's been lots of fun. And if anybody is interested in debating me, feel free to message me. You can either debate me, have a discussion, or we can play apologetic mock trials where we both agree on a topic, but one of us kind of like plays devil advocate just to generate thought provoking and educational content. But thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you again soon.